recognize the ranking member for opening statement. I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement. I yield back.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Distinguished gentlelady from California, Mary Bono. Gentlelady is recognized.
Chair now recognizes the lady from California is recognized.
I'm pleased to introduce Congresswoman Mary Bono, former U.S. Representative for California's Inland Empire and Desert Region from 1998 to 2013.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Welcome to Sagely Speaking. I'm your host, Mary Bono, and I'm so happy you're here. On this podcast, I hope to bring you insightful conversations with a variety of guests from all walks of life, people with stories, wisdom, and perspectives that inspire and inform. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe, and if you feel inspired, leave a 5-star rating. It helps us reach more listeners like you. Now let's dive into today's conversation. Hello and welcome to Sagely Speaking. Today is a really special podcast for me. It's something I've never done, and that is interview a friend in person. And as you can see, we have a magnificent backdrop. We've got this very special rail car at the Durango Railroad Museum, or Durango Silverton Narrow Gauge Museum to be complete. But, you know, in my life, I meet a lot of amazing, interesting people. And I met Al Harper one day. I showed up in his office after playing a round of golf. I think he looked at me like, why are you here? And who are you? And we've been fast friends ever since. Now, Al is an amazing figure. I think he's inspirational, and that's why I wanted to talk to him. So, Al Harper, welcome to Sagely Speaking.
Well, I'm honored to be here. It's a privilege for me to get to be with you.
Well, this is going to be a very interesting conversation. We're going to start, I'm going to talk about the Florida days very briefly, because you were a very successful businessman in Southern Florida, very involved in your community, doing a bunch of transit work. And what happened one day? Did you just say to your wife, Carol, I've got a great idea. Let's sell everything. Let's buy a couple of historic railroads and move to Colorado. Is that what you did?
Well, the first thing, we were in the real estate business, and a company owned by Warren Buffett came and said, we want to buy you. So that's what really started. Well, what do we do now? And my partner and I sold our real estate company to a Buffett company called Home Services, which is now probably the largest brokerage company in the United States by dollar volume. And I'd been doing a lot of work in transportation for the community benefit in South Florida. I was on the board of directors of a transit railroad and served on numerous committees that involved buses and cabs and so forth. And then I was on the board of directors of the Florida East Coast Railroad, which is a New York listed company that's freight railroad that runs the length of Florida. So with that background, I got involved in a company that wanted to do a tourist train from Miami to Orlando. And they asked me to help them grow that company. And strangely enough, my real estate partner's brother was the tax lawyer for the man that owned the Durango and Silverton Railroad, and he wanted to sell it. So, long story short, I ended up, my wife and I bought the railroad and sold everything we had in Florida and moved here.
I mean, could you think of two more drastic locales between flat Florida and then the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, where I live at 9,000 feet. You're probably about 6,300 feet or so, but the train starts at town level and traverses up through the passes, and there you go.
It was a change. We went from 200 feet above sea level to 6,800 feet is where our house is, and we travel to 9,500 feet in Silverton, Colorado. So that was a change. Mostly what was a change is one thing to be on the board of a railroad, another thing to own it, and that took some learning curve for me, but a great experience and really a lot of fun.
And when did you buy the second railroad?
Well, I bought this one, and a couple of things that became a reality was, one, my first trip on the railroad, I was the youngest guy on the train when I was, in that time, about 52 years old. And it didn't generate enough revenue to really hire top-notch people. So I wanted to buy a second train, and strangely enough, a man in Miami owned a railroad in North Carolina. And so within a year, we bought that one. And they were doing children's event called Thomas the Tank or Thomas the Train. And I saw them attract 25,000 kids in 9 days. And I said, that's what we got to do in this railroad business, is get children on it. So we bought that railroad. Between the two railroads, we started doing children's events, and the railroads boomed. Yeah.
But you think about trains. There is always a fascination with young children about trains. Thomas the Tank, of course, is a great example.
Yeah.
But they love them if they're exposed to them. You think that it would have been a no-brainer and that customer base would have been here before you had to recruit them.
Well, you know, I think to step back, what intrigued me the most about this railroad was the history. I love history. I like to know our past. In fact, I preach it, that history is the roadmap to the future. If we don't know our past, we're just going to repeat mistakes over and over. And so history was important to me. But along with that is education. So our company got into the history and the preservation of history, and then into the educational aspect. And then to get the crowds, we decided entertainment was important. So our company is based on preservation of history, education, and providing entertainment that brings the crowds, that really gives you the financial support to do your mission. And but I also say another important thing about it, the best way to preserve history is to make its presentation so interesting and exciting that people will pay a fair price for a great experience. So we're in the experience business. We want to present history in the greatest experience possible. And that's what we do.
You know, I'm going to jump around a lot because there's so much to talk about with you, Al. One is when you talk about preserving history and entertainment, the fact that Kevin Costner's production of Horizon, shot here, used the train and transformed the depot into a couple of depots, Chicago and St. Louis, if I remember correctly. And I was an extra on that shoot, and I think I was fired. I think Mr. Costner fired me because I couldn't climb up the stairs in my huge period, costume with a petticoat and a bustle and a train behind my dress. So I kept struggling to get up the stairs. So I think I was fired. However, he found the train. He's used the train. He's going to continue to use the train. And of course, movies like Horizon are about the past and history. And
well, there's been maybe 20 different movies that have featured the railroad at one time, and of course Kevin Costner was the latest. And by the way, I got to spend a couple hours with him on the set, and what a nice, humble gentleman. A perfectionist in the way he was shooting that film. And I tell people there was one shot where he wanted a shot of the conductor looking at the time to say it's time to go. He must have shot 4 times just the way the conductor was holding his watch. And I found that so interesting. And then several other things would happen during the set, and I was sitting with him in the director's tent. He'd turn around and say, "Al, isn't that funny, the way that worked out?" And I just sat there, and I was totally intrigued. And I'm happy to say that he has announced he's going to have the second segment, the second movie coming out in this summer, and he's also talking to us about doing the third one. So we're going to be working with him on the third movie, which is really exciting.
That's
fantastic. A lot of fun. Yeah.
I had the same experience. I thought he was a very, very down-to-earth, genuine, kind person, and certainly knew his art.
He does.
And watched him interact with everybody on the set, and he treated everybody very well. So that was a pretty cool moment, I think, in Durango history. Our hometown is Durango, Colorado, and that was fantastic.
It was St. Louis, Missouri.
It was, I'm sorry, St. Louis. When you see St. Louis, the train, God, I know that was actually Durango. And but let's I want to jump into the entertainment space because we're there. So here in Durango, the holiday season, you do the Polar Express.
Yeah, when I did, I was doing Thomas the Tank, and that's controlled by, today it's controlled by the Mattel Toy Company, and Thomas was difficult to work with, and so I decided I wanted to look for a brand that I could do, and we experimented with Charlie Brown, Snoopy, and Peanuts. We still have that brand in contract, We worked with A Little Engine That Could, Dolly Parton does a lot with that story in her reading programs. But none of that really worked out. And then the movie Polar Express came out, and we went to Warner Brothers, and it took me 3 years to convince them to let a little company out in Durango, Colorado, take it over. They finally did, and again, another long story short, we now are the largest Christmas brand for Warner Brothers Productions. We're better than Elf or any of the others, and they've made more money uh, with the Polar Express train rides that we put on than they ever made with a movie. So we're real proud of that. Um,
Now, how many passengers is that, Al, that you do over a holiday season?
We're at 60 locations now with Polar Express through licensing and partnerships. And this last year we did 1,745,000 riders on the Polar Express. And we just are now doing our projections. We expect to be around 63 to 64 locations this coming year, and we're shooting to do 2 million riders. Now, there's a little addition to that that's coming, and we're working with Warner Brothers, and we're going to do our first Harry Potter Hogwarts Express train ride, and that'll be in hopefully in July. We think this year we'll do a test production. So
This is huge.
it is.
I think this is going to surpass Polar Express, with all due respect to Polar Express. But Harry Potter this is going to be more business than you can handle, Al.
It's. We think it is going to be. I'm hoping you're right. But here's the thing. Polar Express Christmas is the brand. And our train rides bring every element of Christmas on and make it very personal to every single rider. And everybody gets off the train with a gift. Everybody meets Santa. Everybody has the photo ops. And so it is a terrific brand that we think will continue to grow. We're in Australia. We're going into Spain. We've been invited to look at a location in Norway. So Polar is going to grow. But Harry Potter is absolutely multi-generational now. We're excited about it. There's some funny requirements. We're working with the Blair Partnership, which is the author's partnership that manages all of her products, and you can't do anything without their permission. And the author, actually controls it totally. And so you're not allowed to do the characters from the movie, but you do representations of the story and the characters, and of course the competitive teams and the magic wizardry and all that kind of thing. So to give you an idea, just our pre-production cost to get ready for the first test show is $5 million. So it's a big commitment on our part, but we're excited about it. And you know what? We take it to railroads, and now all the railroads that deal with us, these 60 different locations, all say, we've made it so they can prosper. We are making those historic railroads successful, because just without events, they're just train rides. With events, they bring the excitement and the crowds, which makes it so they can preserve the history that they want to. And that's a good feeling.
You know, one thing that's pretty cool to see in our hometown of Durango, when the Polar Express season is upon us, town is filled with people, parents and children alike, and grandchildren in my case, in their pajamas, walking around town in pajamas, going to dinner in their pajamas, because they get into this whole character thing, and it's beautiful to see. It's kind of wild if you don't know what's happening, if you're just a tourist visiting. But it's like, why is that couple out there in their flannel jammies in the middle of December? But town does that, and the way that people turn up and become part of the experience. Do you think the same thing is going to happen with Harry Potter?
I think it will. It's interesting to say that about Durango. Durango's a town of 17,000 to 18,000 people. In 45 days, we put 42,000 people in downtown Durango. It just gives you an idea of the dynamic. And you'll see that repeated worldwide in the Polar Express. We're going to test it. It looks like it'll be St. Louis is where the test market will be. And that's a calculation, because we want to use that to measure how far people will come in distance to get to Harry Potter. It'll give us an idea of the markets that we should go to. So it'll be interesting. And they have a neat old station down there. I don't know if you've ever seen the St. Louis Grand Central Station, but it's beautiful. and I think it'll be a great location. So Harry Potter's going to be our adventure this year.
Oh, I can't wait. I think it's going to be phenomenal. I can't wait to take my grandkids. We have 11 between my husband Steve and I. We have 11 grandkids, so I look forward to getting the insider deal.
I know
on
the
those
guy. I
tickets.
can get you on.
I hope so. But let's talk a little bit technology. Polar Express, you've been doing a while, but as you're mounting this whole new experience of Harry Potter, I'm assuming that technology changes are significant and what they're having you do are.
Dramatically. You know, a standard gauge rail car is about 85 feet long. If you can imagine where there's what you'd call a luggage rack or hat rack on both sides of the car, that is video screens the length of the car, 85 feet. And it takes 6 computer operators to do all of the magic that happens on those screens. You know, the wizards on board, they can take their magic wand and point at one screen, it'll happen, or they can wave it the length of the train car, and it'll just go like a bird flying through. And it's fantastic, the technology that they've done. And something I never was familiar with was puppetry. We have a puppet that Mentor is one of the evil characters in Harry Potter. The Mentor comes on, and there's a man in black, but the monsters, all mechanical arms and faces and heads and eyes, are all magically done by this puppeteer that's inside that character. I just can't describe how fantastic it is. And of course, there's you know, the competition with the wands between the houses and all that kind of thing, and a little bit of a chocolate treat, and different things happen on board that I think people are going to like. Just as important as getting on the train, you're going to go through a series of sets, and you'll actually walk through and disappear walking through the brick wall. And I kept thinking, how do you do that?
Yeah, how do they do that?
It only disappears to the people behind. It's a set of mirrors, and the way they're angled, the person in front of you will suddenly disappear.
Oh, the old
And
smoke and mirrors trick.
it is a smoke and mirrors trick. And actually, I saw it work, and I thought, holy mackerel, that's amazing, because it's an illusion of walking through a wall.
Wow.
And I think that'll be fun. And then when you get off of the train ride, there's a whole nother set of sets. And of course, they'll have the you know, my mind went blank, the beer, the special beer that it's a soft drink. It's not real beer, and different types of gifts and so forth that you can wander around and experience, and lots of photo ops. We're excited about it. It's going to be fun to just see how well it goes, and we'll do one production this year. We want to get 50,000 people there to imagine it and test it. Warner Brothers is warning us, they think we'll do 100,000. I don't know, but I'd be happy with 50 just to make sure we're getting it right. And then 2026, we'll go to 6 locations. In 2027, we'll do a different brand that can go to smaller railroads. It's not a brand, but it's a different production that'll go to smaller railroads.
So you love the historic tourist trains.
I do.
You love film production.
Yeah.
And then you have another whole property in Tucson. So are you, by the way, when you say people, I am Al Harper, and this is what I am. What are you? Are you just an entrepreneur? Are you?
You know, I think entrepreneur is an interesting word. My business career has never been about money. It just isn't. It's about the fun of doing challenging things and doing projects and then making them work. And I can tell you, any entrepreneur that said he never had a deal that went bad, he's lying to you. Because if you're a true entrepreneur, you're experimenting. And not all experiments go perfectly. But you say, what do I do? I love history, so anything with history is important to us. We have a project in Tucson that's it's one of those we're really working through. It was it got abandoned during COVID, theme park that was a movie studio park. It has a complete old Western town and all sorts of facilities for doing movies, and over 400 productions, Western productions, were done there, including scenes from Tombstone and all sorts of the old Western TV shows. High Chaparral was shot there, many others. And so we're trying to bring it back. And it's an expensive project, but we think the history of film production of the Westerns is important. And so we're trying to bring it back. And the best way to make it pay for it is to get people to take tours and people to do events. And so we do a Christmas show, we do a Halloween show, all with Western formats, but we have the shootouts and the stunts and people falling off three-story buildings and, all the
I mean, the
usual.
people who were supposed to fall off three-story buildings
They
are
actually
falling
do.
off.
They do. They
Yeah.
fall into
Yeah, the pits.
the pits
Yeah.
that have all the foam in it. But it is an exciting adventure, and then you get to see the history where these movies were made, and so that's a lot of fun. And again, it goes with the history. But we also like the aura of the past, and we've invested in a fancy name is an equine center. It's just a ranch, and we want to show what the Western horsemanship was. And so we have stables, and it's here near Durango, and we've invested in that. And it's a turnaround. The former owner didn't keep it up and didn't keep the business up, and I believe it's going to come out really well. And we give tours, and we board horses. We have petting zoo. If horses and mules and longhorn steers is petting zoo, we have a petting zoo. But so when you say what am I, if it has to do with history and the aura of our past and maintaining the legacy of our past, we're very interested. But we're business people, and like I said before, the best way to preserve the history is to do it on a basis that people want to pay a fair price to experience it. And by doing that, that means that this history will be here for generations to come. And that's what's important to me is it's not about, oh gosh, we made a lot of money. It's about we've created an ability to preserve history so it'll be here forever. And that's our specialty. That's what we like.
So in your soup, the mix of your soup of entrepreneurialism, how much is being a visionary? How much weight does that carry in your success to see things that other people can't see?
I think an entrepreneur can look at a business, and I'm guilty of this. I can walk in a restaurant and say, well, I'd move that over there, and I'd put this on the menu, and I have this served this way. I do it in restaurants, I do it in banks, I do it everywhere I go. It's if I owned it, what could I do? And when I look at business opportunities, is can I make it better? Can I add instant value to it with the ideas? And so that's the dreaming part. And I had a very successful real estate company that we sold to Mr. Buffett's firm, and but it was that whole attitude. I could make it better than other people could do it, and so it's not that I'm smarter. It's not that I'm came from a different background. I was very fortunate. My parents didn't leave a great estate to us, but they gave me a work ethic. They gave me a belief that you can do anything if you work hard. The importance, the number one thing they taught is love what you do. And I preach this in our company. I say, love God, love your country, your community, your family, your customers. If you put love in all of that, the money will work out. The rest of it works out. And that's been true for me. And I've hit rough spots where things didn't work out the way I wanted them to, and some partnerships that didn't work out. But you know what? I put the love in it, and it all came together. So it didn't hurt me. And now I'm at that point where I'm going through the transition, of a young son who loves to do what I do, and he's really. And I always tease him, he's better looking, better educated, has more energy, and it really makes me mad.
I was wondering what that transition feels like. It's got to be hard, especially with your sort of that you have this tendency to walk into any environment and know how you can make it better.
Yeah.
How does that work with your son taking over?
Well, fortunately, he has the same kind of vision I do, but it is hard. When you've owned your own business most of your life, you've always been in charge. And I laugh now. I have to go to committee when I do things. My son and my wife, I say, I'm going to do this. So it's a little different than the early days when I just kind of made up my mind. And then my wife Carol has been really great at. I always talk over with her. I keep her. She always goes through all of our financials. She's very smart, and it's really worked out a great partnership. But it's different today because I'm reaching that golden 80 years old, and but I work 7 days a week, and it's not work.
Right.
It isn't work. I mean, I have fun in our museum. Saturdays and Sundays, I only come in for an hour or two, and usually it's just to write letters or notes or something. It's not. I've never worked a day in my life, really. It's just been the joy of thinking about things, dreaming about things, and even when I'm gonna sit down with you. Last night I spent the whole night thinking about, well, I'd like to bring this into that conversation. I'd like to talk about this. And maybe there's an opportunity to say this. We live in the greatest country on earth, and I hear people talk about all the division, political and so forth. But if I sat down with anybody, I'd find 80% we agree on, and the other 20%, we can work it out. And that's the greatness of our country. And people say, well, Al, you could have been bigger or richer if you did this, that, or the other. It didn't matter to me. That wasn't the game plan. But I will say, anybody today, still in this country, if you work hard, you put the love into it, as I described earlier, you can be successful. The opportunities are there, and I don't care if you're white or black or Asian or whatever your background. It doesn't matter. The opportunity is there if you put the love in it and you work hard. There's just no escaping it, and so I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of what little I've done, and I want to open the door for anybody that wants to try it. I'll help them.
That's phenomenal. So I'm labeling you entrepreneur, visionary, historian, of course, right? We're throwing that in the mix. Optimist into the mix.
I am an optimist.
Eternal optimist. We talk about politics a lot, and I would think we're pragmatists at heart with a certain bent politically. But that 20% you're talking about, the unfortunate thing now in America, that 20%, whoever you are, you've been hit on the head with a hammer pretty much, to have your emotions inflamed and incited, and to be angry, and to be, angry about all sorts of stuff. And that's what's unfortunate. It's a little bit different, and I hope we can rein that back in.
We'll continue with our interview in a moment, but first I'd like to thank my sponsors. Lucy Pet Foods is the leader in gut health. Their formulas for life feature prebiotic, balanced fiber that nourishes your dog and cat's total health. Every purchase helps support the Lucy Pet Foundation, a 501c3 charity helping animals. Save 15% off your first order and use the promo code SAGELYSPEAKING, all one word, and you will get free shipping at lucypetfoods.com. If you're committed to tackling the opioid and addiction crises, then you need to be at the 2025 RX Summit. Use code SAGELY, that's SAGELY, for an extra $100 off. Join top experts and professionals as we share strategies for prevention, deflection, treatment, and recovery. Don't miss this chance to be part of the change. Head over to rx-summit.com to register now. That's rx-summit.com for an additional $100 off.
Hi, honey. I just wanted to give you a quick heads up that I'll be going out with the guys after work tonight to catch the game. It's been a long day and I'm pretty wiped out, so Harry's going to give me a pill to help me stay awake. I won't know it, but the pill will be laced with fentanyl, which means you won't see me again because I'll be dead almost instantly. I love you.
And now, back to our interview.
When we met the other day to talk about this podcast, and we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, as we always do, you gave me this brochure. And I thought, my podcast just wrote itself. So it's American Heritage Railways, and it is Al's philosophy on business. And when I saw this, I thought the number one thing he's going to say is get your MBA from Wharton.
No. Education is important, and this is something that I disagree with academia today. I think liberal arts is the best education you can get. And why do I say that? STEM's important. We need the scientists. We need the people that really want to go that route. It's very important. But a liberal arts education gives you the ability to talk to anybody almost a little bit about any subject and be able to articulate what you say and what you write. And liberal arts is I think, one of the best education you get. Now, maybe in your master's degree you want to go into STEM. Maybe that's what, science and technology and so forth is so important. But I think everybody ought to start with liberal arts education. I'm a sociology major, and I own railroads, and I've been pretty good at it. I made a good living for my family, and I've been on a mission to preserve history, and it's been very successful.
So wait, you're saying that my art history degree from USC is actually valuable?
Yeah, I think it is, because liberal arts and art, or whatever portion of that liberal arts is your thing. People say, well, I'm an English major. What'd that do for me? You know what? You can speak, you can express your ideas as an artist, you can explain things as an artist, whereas so often science and engineering and all makes you so data-driven that you lose the creativity and the vision that needs to go with it, and the ability to express yourself and to get together with people. And I think, I've always said, I can make friends with anybody.
I've seen it.
I can talk to anybody. I can talk about almost any subject. Not that I'm a genius on any subject, far from it, but I can talk with you. You want to talk music? I'll talk about Mussorgsky and Tchaikovsky and so forth, because I took a liberal arts class. I can talk about painters. I love to go to museums. Art museums are a lot of fun. History museums are a lot of fun, because I got a little taste of it all. But I can write a good business letter too. I can get in front of a group and talk to them and relate to them and laugh with them, and I can cry with them too. And I think that background of liberal arts was really helpful for me.
That's encouraging. As you know, my husband is an astronaut. He loves to give me a hard time about being an art historian, if you would call me that, with a bachelor's degree, and him, of course, always talking about STEM and how important it is, and they're both important, for sure. But let's talk about, you've touched on this, but in your typical Al Harper optimistic way, you didn't use the word failure. You said things didn't always turn out the way they should, but how about abject failure? Have you experienced that, and how do you endure that?
I probably lost more money than most people make in a lifetime on different projects. But every one of them was a learning experience. So I've never had a failure. I've had things that didn't work. And every one of those things that didn't work taught me great lessons and helped me progress in life. Every road, every expressway has a pothole somewhere, and you're going to hit them. But that's just opportunity. That's just a chance to learn a lesson. I remember I invested in a theme park in North Carolina that had been shut down, and I invested with partners, and the partners let me down. I wasn't an active partner, I was a silent partner. They let me down, they left, and they had borrowed $10 million, and the bank with the $10 million came to collect it all from me, because I was the only one that had any money.
Ouch.
And I said, look, guys, at that time, I didn't have $10 million, but I'll tell you what, I'll work with you, and I'm honest. I went home from a meeting that I had with that bank, and they didn't ask for any money yet. I wrote a check for $50,000, and I sent it to that banker. And the banker called me and said, in my 30 years of banking, I've never had anybody do that. And I said, all I want to tell you is I'm sincere. I want to work with you. Tell me how we can do this. And we ended up settling that thing, and he made a huge reduction, and within 2 years I paid everything off. And I had a good friend, and that bank wanted to loan me money.
So did you just bypass that whole feeling of being devastated from that failure? I mean, that's a level of resiliency to get to where you go, forget rock bottom, I'm going to skip that,
Well,
to take a bridge to better success.
in life, you have to be brave, and you got to take risk in business. If you don't take risk, then you're a 9-to-5 employee. If you take risk, you're the one that goes past 5 and puts all your worth in it. At least 3 or 4 times, I have bet everything I have to make something work. And you know what? I survived them all. But I was willing because I had faith. I had faith in God. I've had faith in my ability. And I always have another thing. When there's a problem, and my father-in-law used to tease me all the time, you have plan A, plan B, plan C. I said, I do. If that doesn't work, I can go to B. If that doesn't work, I can go to C. If that doesn't work, I can go to D. And by actually writing that down on a piece of paper, I never felt lost.
Oh.
I felt, well, that didn't work, but let's do this. If that doesn't work, we'll do that. Also, I have to say, I made friends with everybody I could along the way. And I loved mentors. I loved to listen to them. And I met some people that were really tough. Really, most people wouldn't get along with them, but they were my friends. And I'd come up with a business deal. I had one guy was extremely well. I'd call him up and I'd say, you know, I've got a really good opportunity to do a real estate deal, but I need $500,000 tomorrow.
I'm not on that call list, am I?
And I'd call him, and he never used my first name. He was a gruff guy, long hair with a four carat diamond in his ear. Harper, is it a good deal? And I said, yeah. Okay, I'll wire you the money. No documents, no nothing. Next day I'd get $500,000. And he trusted me.
Can I have his number?
Unfortunately, I've reached that point. He passed on a couple of years ago, but
But that handshake deal,
it was just
do you
telephone
still
call.
conduct business that way?
I would do that. Yeah, I had somebody, and now it's kind of the other way. Now I'm in a position I can help somebody. I had a local businessman there. He was in a jam, and I said, well, what do you know, and he was just lamenting. He didn't ask me for money, and I said, what's the problem? And he said, I just made a mistake and didn't pay some taxes, and you know, I got 2 days to get it. And I said, well, how much is it? And he said, X amount. And I said, okay. I wrote him a check and gave it to him. And he said, well, what do I owe you? And I said, you owe me to pay me back because I'm trusting you. And you know what? 30 days later, he paid me back. People did that for me. I can do that for them.
That's amazing. I'm going to refer to this brochure again, if you'd call that pamphlet. Your first item, and you've touched on it, is love.
Yeah.
I would never imagine to see that in the basic principles of running a successful business, but your number one is love. You've touched on it again. Can you expand on that a little bit?
You know, how important it is to enjoy what you're doing, you know? And isn't joy love? Isn't it? A lot of it is, I love what I do. I get great joy of what I do. And so if I can take and share that same joy of what I do with my country, I loved when I was in the military. I didn't want to go, Vietnam War and all, but I went in, best thing ever happened to me. I loved it, absolutely loved it.
Said nobody ever about Vietnam, but that's that Al Harper spirit again.
I just loved what I did and had a great time, and you know, I got out and had a lot of opportunity. I did a lot of public service type of things in Miami, different projects that need to be done. I didn't do political issues. I did social issues, and that worked out. I love the community, and I love it here. I try to be involved here as much as I can. And you have to be wise because, I mean, I get asked for money almost every day, and you can't do that with everybody. So you try to do what has the greatest impact for the most people. Once in a while, you'll see one where some family, I'll read in the paper, some family had a terrible thing happen, and I'll call them and see if they need help. But and I'm in a position to do that, and I think that's important, and that's the love. I think God's been good to me. Somebody wrote me a letter just now, and I wrote him a letter back. Tim Tebow, everybody knows, the football player. He had a quote that I copied, and it was, God creates every day for a purpose, and He does it in purpose. There's a reason things happen, and part of the love is follow that purpose, follow that plan, and that's just part of the love.
Which dovetails perfectly, and I'm not going to go through all 25 of these. I've selected what I found were the most surprising, so just a few of them, but that dovetails perfectly into noble purpose and not money. And you've touched on that, but
if you go into business and it's all about money, that's all you think about, and you can't be successful with that. You have to be wise. You have to do good accounting and keep track of your bills and all that kind of thing, but the noble purpose is, what does it do for your employee, for your community, for your client? What is it doing? And so I like to think that everything I do has some kind of a noble purpose. I want to make sure my employees are taken care of. I want to make sure that my customers have the greatest experience they can. I want to make sure that if we do profit, how do we share that with the community? How do we put it to work in the community? And we actually have line item budget of what we're going to spend in the community just to help. And we always go over it because there's always something new that comes up. And my wife and I tend to really try to do things that help children's causes, educational causes. We're really trying to work thoroughly with the 250-150 committee because of my belief in America. And the 250-150 is 2026 is the 250th birthday of the United States, our Declaration of Independence, and 150 is Colorado's birthday. And so we're really going all out in that, and what we're doing there is what's called a passport. Every fourth grader is going to get a passport from each of the 8 counties on the western slope that will introduce them to things they should go see. And if they go there, they'll get their passport stamped, and we'll see who can get the most. And we're going to do 2 years of all fourth graders are going to get that. And we're excited about it. So that's the kind of projects we do.
something you say in here, I found it to be very important in Washington, D.C. when I was in Congress, and that is never burn a bridge.
Yeah, it's easy for, it's like the 3 partners that stranded me owing $10 million. I could have been really angry, but you know what? All 3 had a reason they couldn't perform. And I felt like maybe they had dragged me into it, but I felt bad for them because they were in terrible trouble, and I wasn't. I could work my way through it. So who knows, somebody that does you wrong, why feel bad about it? Instead, know that someday they'll recognize that maybe they owe you something, maybe they need to make it up to you somehow, and you never know. You can never have too many friends. So I keep everybody as a friend. There's some I'll never do business with again, but I keep everybody as a friend.
Good for you. You talk about turning off electronics. And you're almost 80 years old. I would think that wouldn't be that difficult for you. The younger generation, I consider myself a younger generation at 63, but we're addicted to our electronics and that feedback we get. And I would think that your point is don't look to the web or wherever for feedback.
Electronics will control your life, and I say that in one sense, and then the other instance, I had to call my daughter to figure out how to work the TV so I can get to YouTube and watch a football game. So, you know, the electronics are a challenge for those of us that never dealt with them. When I was in college, nobody had a computer.
Right.
I mean, to show the difference to today, nobody had a cell phone. I remember the first time I saw a cell phone, it was about that big, and you had to have it plugged into a transformer or something in your trunk. It was huge. So, I mean, it's just changed so rapidly. When I was first in business, I had to have a teletype machine to communicate with Europe because of the hours. I mean, there's just nothing like it. And so it's all changed. The hardest thing that I say about electronics, though, is don't lose the ability to have eyeball-to-eyeball, face-to-face communication. You know, Zoom's great, and it's helpful when people can't get together. But when I see somebody on Zoom, I can't see their eyes well. I can't see their arms and how they position it. Whereas if I'm sitting in a meeting, I can tell you exactly what that person's thinking about if I really want to.
I'm going to
by
be
just
so
watching
nervous
them.
next time we talk in your office. It's like, what am I doing with my hands right now?
But it is your expression. And, you know, do you do this, or do you lean back, or do you sit suddenly, or sit real tall? All of that's communicating how you feel and what you're thinking. And if they're slouching and laid back, you're just having a good time.
Well, number 24 and 25 on your list, and those are the last two I'm going to go over. And 24 is humility, which you exude.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think all entrepreneurs have to have an ego, thinking that you can do it better than the other guy. I'm not going to say that doesn't exist. By the second tone, though, I'm no better than anybody else. Everybody is the same. Everybody should be treated with respect and equality. I've in my own small world, I've been successful at what I do. But you know what? I owe it to everybody around me. It wasn't Al. It was a team, and it was the opportunities God gave me. It was mentors that I had that led me in right directions, or that scolded me. You know,
Scolded you?
Oh yeah, I had a guy in the real estate business that, you know, I would say, we got to do this, we got to do that, and he said, wait a minute, I want you to sit back and listen to what you said. He scolded me, you're not listening, you're not thinking this through of how to talk to somebody to make this deal work. And he was right. Listen, communicate, you know, when you shake a hand, I shake a hand, but I always put my other hand out and hold their arm to know I mean it. It's just a habit I've had. And so the humility is important. Humility means listening, meaning maybe the other guy's right, you know. I think I have one of my sons, his name is Matt, I call him Matt the Skeptic. He automatically, well, anything I can say about politics, he'll challenge me. And you know what? He's been right on some occasions. You know, I haven't thought through some issues that I need to think through. And then other times he'll say, Dad, you're making a big deal, but it's not a big deal. This is just the heat of the time. It'll change to a different subject tomorrow. He's right about that. Mm-hmm. What everybody's so upset about today will be something different totally in a year. And so that humility, get off your high horse and know that everybody's got good ideas, and respect everybody where they're from and what their thoughts are. I'm not going to go on a lot about it, but it's just, and that happens every day. You know, I was sitting with a guy, and he was telling me about a challenge he had with some members of family getting involved in drugs. I could relate.
Yeah.
You know, I could relate. I've faced that issue, and in the harshest of ways, I faced it and worked my way through it. And to here's a African-American gentleman, total different background, telling me how he got through it. And we had so much in common. And I appreciated that conversation.
Well, we've had many conversations about that topic too, and what it's like to go through it. And I appreciate your friendship and steady hand as we've had those conversations. But the last item cracks me up. Watch your language. I go, oh gosh, now I have to really be careful around Al with what I say.
You know, That's one I got to check myself on, because I don't know whether it's been around kids and it's a different age today. I think as I was growing up, it was much more Puritan, and the meaning of words has changed so much, and you hear a lot of bad language. But you know what? If you're thoughtful in how you're going to express yourself, you can be more intelligent than just saying ugly things. Ugliness doesn't help. It doesn't help in a situation. That doesn't mean when I hit my finger with a hammer when I'm doing something, I don't say something terrible, but that's at me. But if I'm in a conversation with others, there's no need for that. There's just not.
When we were in your office, Steve, my husband, picked up the brochure and he's looking at it and he gets to number 25, watch your language. He didn't stop for a minute. Our conversation, like hitting him, why are you, watch your language? It's like, yeah. So sometimes these words just work so perfectly. It's hard to fill in the blank for something that fits an expletive so well.
Well, and again, I think time has changed the meanings of words and the use of words, and maybe fortunate, maybe unfortunate. I don't know. But I do try to watch what I say. A lot of times I want to say something bad, and I'll stop and say, excuse this word, but it's the only word that fits. And then I'll say a bad word.
No, you come out with like darn or gosh darn it. That's how Harper at his worst.
Yeah.
Well, in any event, so you said you lost sleep, things you wanted to say, and you talked about the greatness of this country and opportunities. What else kept you up at night?
I think that was most important, because I see things going on today in our country, and obviously we all have opinions of what's right. The situation in the Middle East and with Hamas is terrible. All those kinds of things make me worry. I worry about what's happened in Ukraine. I worry about Iran and what are their objects. But I also, if I want to impart anything, it's that we live in a country where the future is still great. And I really believe we live in a country, we haven't attained what our highest purpose is yet. And I think that's still in the future. And I believe that as terrible as things look now, there's still hope. There's still this love and kindness behind things that are the typical American. And, I spend a lot of time in rural America. I have a home in rural America, and I have some projects I'm doing to try to help small town America. And I see what they think. It's great. It's maybe simplistic, but it's great. It's still old-time values. Not that they don't have problems, and there's plenty of problems. Drugs are bad in rural America like they're everywhere. But the promise and the hope and the system of values is still there. And so I think we have a great future ahead of us. And we'll get through all of this. We'll get through the Middle East. We'll get through the border crisis. And we'll even get through whether transgenders can play in women's sports. All of that will get cured. And I just want to keep that hope and positiveness and excitement about our future, because it's there. It really is there.
One thing you talk about, and maybe it's a good thing to close on if you ruminate on this, the adage that those who fail to remember history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
But your take on that is, it is because of history that we will build upon it to make things better. It's the positive spin on it all.
It is. History is that roadmap. Let's look at how we got through. I mean, think of what people must have thought. World War I, the world was coming to an end. World War II was coming to an end again. And the Cold War, I remember in the 5th grade hiding under my desk as a practice because we were going to get nuked. We will get through this. And I think mankind will understand that there is a future for all of us. And I think that's my hope and my excitement. And most important, I'm having fun.
That's the key. A very young 79 years old, almost 80, the big 80th birthday. But Al, I want to thank you very much for your time today. You are truly inspirational, a mentor of mine, and it's just a pleasure and an honor to know you beyond belief. So
well, we share a lot of love together.
Well, number one on the Al Harper list of being a successful businessman. But to either our viewers or our listeners of Sagely Speaking, I want to thank you very much for joining us on this episode, and hopefully others. You can catch future episodes, previous episodes, whatever. But again, fascinating people, fascinating lives with great stories to tell. And Al Harper, I would say, is in the very top of my favorites of all time of being in Sagely Speaking. So thank you for watching or for listening. To our sponsors, I want to thank you for without you, we couldn't do what we do. And until next time on Sagely Speaking, be well, and we'll see you then.